Let's go back to that fateful Black Saturday fire in Victoria. 2009, 173 people perished. The Royal Commission identified 5 volumes, a lot of serious deficiencies in top-level emergency management leadership in Victoria. There's a lot of fears now, after recent changes, it could all happen again. Now, this comes after the merger of the Metropolitan Fire Brigade in Melbourne and elements of the Country Fire Authority, or the CFA, in Victoria to create a new Fire Services Victoria. And there's a lot of concern that this new body is underprepared and undertrained for the work of the bushfire summer. Real concerns, particularly in regional and rural Victoria, that another catastrophe is waiting to happen, particularly given the low levels of hazard reduction burns due to COVID over the winter and spring periods. Joining me now for more on all of this, Victorian Shadow Minister for Emergency Services, Mr Nick Wakeling. Nick, thank you for your time. I looked at those hot temperatures in New South Wales over the weekend. Those sorts of temperatures cause Victoria a lot of grief. Victoria has a horrific record in past years of bushfire deaths. An internal CFA report, we're told, has found glaring problems with bushfire preparedness. What can you tell us?
Well, look, the CFA conducted an internal review of last season's bushfires, and it basically investigated all aspects from training to equipment to the coordination on the day. And of the 98 areas that were investigated, it showed that 80% of those areas were unsatisfactory. So 80% of the preparedness of the CFA for bushfires, Victoria was not up to scratch. And what does that mean? It means that we're not prepared for this year's fire season. And as you rightly pointed out, the government's been more focused on creating this new union-led Fire Rescue Victoria than it is on equipping our volunteers in the CFA across Victoria.
So you're talking about a promise of $126 million. This is in relation to critical training and equipment. I'm told that vehicles are literally not in the sheds where they're supposed to be for bushfire seasons. I'm told that volunteers, because of all the COVID restrictions and rules, haven't fronted for their training. If they haven't fronted for their training, they're unable to go out there should there be a fire. What are the CFA telling you?
Well, look, we know that the government's been more focused on this year on funding the new fire service for the permanents, and basically the CFA volunteers across the state telling me they've been treated like poor cousins. I mean, there's been a lack of preparedness in terms of funding assistance for them. They've been prevented from doing training because of COVID. They've been unable to get involved in critical areas such as fuel reduction burns, for heaven's sake, because of COVID. And what does this tell us? It tells us that volunteers, who are the people that we rely on, in the event of another major bushfire, are not prepared as well as they've been in the past. And more importantly, they feel a lack of respect from the government. And unfortunately, there are volunteers telling me across the state that because of the way they're being treated, they're going to walk away, which is certainly not in the state's interest.
Are you concerned about the lack of hazard reduction burns? We know it was a key recommendation of the 2009 Bushfire Royal Commissions. We know the government at that time, Labor government, accepted all the recommendations. Of course, they haven't been met anywhere near been met since that time. I looked at the numbers in detail after the bushfires at the top of the year, but that's got to be a concern.
Oh, it's a deep concern, and we saw this with the bushfires in January of this year, and where you've had a lack of fuel reduction, that certainly impacts on the ability to maintain fires. And as we saw, the fires just get out of hand. We've not only had volunteers prevented from participating in fuel reduction burns, but people in Melbourne were prevented from entering regional Victoria to reduce fuel on their own properties. All of this means that the state is in a worse position than we were 12 months ago.
Look, there's growing rumours too that the head of Emergency Management Victoria, this is the Commissioner Andrew Crisp, there's a lot of rumours around that he'll resign after discrepancies in his evidence to the parliamentary inquiry on hotel quarantine, where he said he briefed his minister, that's the Police and Fire Emergency Minister Lisa Neville, as he's required to under the Emergency Management Act. But she then later said under oath to the court inquiry that she wasn't briefed. So he turned around and recanted his earlier evidence. Who do you believe, Andrew Crisp or Police Minister Lisa Neville?
Well, it's deeply concerning, isn't it? I mean, we've had a litany of people appearing before that inquiry, not knowing what they had said, who made what decision, and then we've seen situations in the public accounts where evidence was presented and then recanted later. I mean, all of this just tells us that there's a lack of trust the Victorians have in the way in which our emergency services are being managed in this state. Volunteers on the ground don't feel trusted. The Victorian community doesn't believe that the government has this under control. And all of this is putting lives and property at greater risk.
Yeah, it is a concern, a big concern. Nick Wakeling, thank you for your time.
Thanks very much.